Yes, please.
I have read where adult stem cells have been used to treat up to, say, 70 diseases. Is that an exaggeration?
Well, I listed many here, and I had other at the bottom, so we could get to 70 maybe, perhaps. But exactly. But keep in mind, I sound like a protagonist about this whole process being very successful. I don't know, honestly, whether this will prove to be effective therapies in the next several decades or in the next century. I mean, I'm hopeful that ultimately, like again, I said early on, partly in jest, but partly seriously, 4.5% of Americans have a body mass index above 40. That means they're severely impaired by their body weight, and those people have what we call severe obesity. Now, if these people are having operations to treat their obesity, bariatric operations, ultimately there's a tremendous amount of adipose tissue that's available. And the idea of harvesting stem cells out of fat to make them available for research and modifying those fat cell precursors or fat cells into other cell types, I think it's a great place to consider doing adult stem cell research. But if you think of the hair follicles, goodness gracious, we all have hair follicles. I mean, they can be plucked, and using multiple hair follicles as sources of stem cells. I mean, the one slide I had showed that there are many, many cell types where we can get these stem cells from out of adults. So I think there's a lot of promise there, but promise is not prophecy fulfilled. Promise is simply ideas about how to use adult stem cells, modify them, and make them therapeutically available. Yes?
It seems to me that, the promise of all this, there's actually, to me, there's a lot of evidence, pretty strong evidence of the effect of the impact of adult stem cells. I work for a company called Pretium BCT, and I'm directly involved in a project that builds a chamber that grows adult stem cells.
Wonderful.
The company is very aware of the amount of money that can be made because people are going to want this treatment, and it's specifically because of what's happened with adult stem cells. And this is a bioreactor chamber that will accelerate the growth of the stem cells, because right now it's expensive to do. If somebody gets a stem cell treatment, it's very expensive to grow them, and this is a unit that will
Wonderful.
speed that process.
Great.
So I guess I just want to get out there that I think there's a lot of promise, but at the same time, there's been a lot of successes. I know at Parkinson's, there was one published in a scientific journal just 2 months ago about their first human trial, and there was an 80% success rate.
Great.
Reduction of the Parkinson's.
Yeah, I tried, other than this windpipe experiment, tried not to go into, because there are a multiplicity of examples like that where there has been limited success to make us be more encouraged about downstream outcomes. I congratulate you and your company to move forward to try to get this done successfully. But we talk about creating new jobs and new opportunities. I think if we want to invest in stem cells, let's redirect that money in a direction that's morally acceptable. I think to take women who are to choose abortion as a way to get these embryonic stem cells, or to take frozen embryos that have been created for new life and say, let's start not discarding them but using them, is an inappropriate way to go about doing things. Yes?
Question on the adult stem cells. We have an individual that has a genetic disease where their DNA is already programmed.
Correct.
Down.
Right.
Are they looking at also, because I can see the excuse or the reasoning behind using embryonic, because you've got somebody who doesn't have that genetic
Correct.
aberration. Whereas if you take something from that individual that already has that genetic disorder, why would you just give it back to him?
Right.
And
Well,
I'm assuming there's research being done to work on that area.
right. So the question relates to people with a mutation or a disease entity that could potentially be a source of adult stem cells to be modified. And I think there is research, like in sickle cell disease, for instance, which occurs mostly in African Americans, where the hemoglobin molecule has been modified by a site-specific mutation. There is now evidence in animals that have been made to have sickle cell disease that taking stem cells or blood-based stem cells out of those animals, you can modify the mutation in the dish and grow these cells up. When re-injected into the animal, now normal hemoglobins are made. So even specific gene defects can be corrected out of the body, and those cells successfully modified, re-injected to correct the defect. My clinic in the hospital is a lipid clinic. And 1 out of 10 people I see have triglyceride levels above 1,000. And 1 out of about 50 of those patients have a rare genetic disease called lipoprotein lipase deficiency. So what I'm thinking, and I'm working with Dr. Roop now to consider ways to go about modifying the lipoprotein lipase genetic defect in adult-derived stem cells to re-inject those now and make some organs of the body capable of making this protein to get their triglyceride levels as normal. This is a very